Welcome to the Bolivar High School's Veterans Day Assembly. I am Auburn Sharp, the Student Body President for the 2022-2023 school year. I am pleased to see so many veterans and their families here with us this morning. Many of our high school groups work together to provide you with this assembly to honor you and your service, and I hope you enjoy it. We will start by having our high school AFJROTC color guard present the colors. Please stand and remove your hats, students. Remain standing through the presentation, the anthem, and the pledge. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Peterson, Senior Class President. Welcome. I am pleased to once again introduce Bolivar High School JROTC and their presentation of the history of veterans. After this presentation, the men's choir will The men's choir will present a song, and there will be a video tribute from a senior.
Good morning, everyone. This year, 2022, marks the 104th anniversary of why we have a Veterans Day. Knowing why we celebrate this day will hopefully give it even greater meaning to us all. In November of 1918, the world had been in what was then known as the Great War for 4 long years. Over 20 million people had lost their lives. A large part of the entire generation of Europeans from that period had been wiped out. America lost over 116,000 men during the war, and we had only been involved during the final year. Not only soldiers suffered through the war, but civilian populations also sustained great hardships, injury, and disease in a new era of total war. It was, therefore, with great relief that both sides agreed to a ceasefire, or armistice, at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. That day, 100 years ago, began violently as both sides tried to acquire whatever final gains in territory they could before the fighting would stop. In the short period from 5:30 a.m. until 11 a.m., more than 10,000 soldiers lost their lives. That's the population of Bolivar gone in just one morning. Then, at 11 a.m., the firing stopped. After some time, soldiers began to emerge from their trenches and eventually began to celebrate, or contemplate, the costs as the realization took hold that the war was finally over. If we had been alive a century ago in this country, we'd be rejoicing in the streets today. Church bells would be ringing, bands would gather and play, songs would be sung, speeches spoke, and people would cheer that American life could return to something less threatening. We would pray that the terrible Great War, as it was known then, would indeed be the war to end all wars. A year later, President Woodrow Wilson signed a proclamation commemorating the end of fighting in World War I as Armistice Day. Wilson wrote, "To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service, and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us, and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of the nations." In 1926, Congress passed a resolution that called upon all state governors to recognize Armistice Day. In 1938, as Adolf Hitler gained power, and as Americans began to worry about the possibility of being forced into another European war, Congress made November 11th a national holiday. Parades and public meetings were held, and business was often suspended around 11 a.m. to allow time to reflect on the tragedy of the Great War and the original Armistice Day.
As it was in the Great War, the United States was not able to stay out of the Second World War, and it proved to be even more costly to Americans than the first. Nearly 420,000 Americans lost their lives, and another million were wounded while fighting in places all around the globe. Over 16 million Americans served in the war, and countless civilians provided in-value support at home. In 1950, Americans were again called upon to serve as the communist forces from North Korea invaded their southern neighbors. 36 Americans lost their lives in the Korean War, and with the communist threat looming, it seemed unlikely that the world war was on the brink of peace. Therefore, in the wake of World War II and the conflict in Korea, Congress changed the name of Armistice Day to Veterans Day. No longer was there only one World War to remember, now there were two, and a Cold War with the Soviet Union was growing as well. It was fitting that the president who signed the bill into law was a veteran himself. President Dwight D. Eisenhower was the commander of American and Allied land forces in Europe during the Second World War and the commander-in-chief during the later part of the Korean War. Veterans Day is certainly the more fitting name for the observance. America's sons and daughters have been involved in many large conflicts since the original Armistice Day in 1918, including World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and dozens of smaller operations as well. President Eisenhower's words ring as true today as they did when he first proclaimed them in 1954. On Veterans Day, let us solemnly remember the sacrifices of all those who fought so valiantly on the seas, in the air, and on foreign shores to preserve our heritage of freedom, and let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting and enduring peace, so that their efforts shall not have been in vain.
Thought the name of what has happened changed. We continue traditions began with the original Armistice Day observations. You may notice around you little red flowers. Those are called poppies, and they symbolize the war memories. Why, you ask? It's because the seeds associated with the flower need light to grow, and when they are buried, they can lie dormant up to 80 years. In Western Europe during World War I, the earth on the Western Front became so turned up by bombs and trench buildings that each spring, amidst the horrors of war, would arise thousands of new red poppy flowers. British officer John McCrae noticed the phenomenon in a cemetery during a funeral for a fellow officer and wrote about it called "In Flanders Field," he wrote. In Flanders Field, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row. His work became the most popular poem of the war, and his impact remains. Even today, we remember and salute our nation's veterans by wearing poppies, as they were remembered over a century ago, and just as they did over a century ago on the original Armistice Day. We hope and pray for a world that knows war no more.
History and they're great. Probably 'Cause
special day. First, I would like to say thank you for your service to all veterans, but it makes me think a lot about my family, my dad, my grandparents who served, and I love hearing the stories that they have and what they went through during the time they served. I think it's a wonderful special day that we will always have.
My brother was in Pearl Harbor, and that was really quite an experience. I remember the day of Pearl Harbor, we just got home from church and we stopped down at the store to get a drink, I guess, and they had the radio on and told about Pearl Harbor. And anyway, that was really upsetting for my mom. She really lost it. And it was about 2 weeks before we heard that he was okay.
So I want to say a special thank you to all the veterans who have served their country both in times of peace and at war. We're grateful for the sacrifice. I've had my dad served. I've got a friend serving right now. So I've had several loved ones that have served or active serving. I'm so grateful for the sacrifices they've made, and I want to say a special thank you.
Veterans Day means to me that people sacrifice their lives to protect our freedoms. And I think it's really special that we are able to honor those people here during the Veterans Day Assembly.
Veterans Day gives me a chance to think about all of the good things in our republic that are still worth fighting for.
I just want to say thank you to the veterans and all the sacrifices they made to our country.
I am thankful for my dad and my cousin, both who were in the Army. I'm just thankful for their service and what they contribute to our country.
Thank you to all the veterans out there and to their families.
And my other brother, Warren, was in the war, and he was in Japan, occupied Japan. Then I had a brother Walter. He got to stay home because my two other brothers went to the Army. And I guess that was the hardest thing, is, hearing from them and communication. Everything was by, air, just by getting letters and airmail.
Thank you all the veterans out there and the families for the sacrifices they made for our country, and my dad.
Thank you, ROTC, Men's Choir, and BRAD for those presentations. I am Sia Badu, Junior Class President, and at this time we want to honor the individual service branches of our United States military. Veterans, when you hear your service branches song performed, please stand and be recognized for your service.
United States Army. Marines. United States Navy. The United States Coast Guard. United States Air Force.
Veterans of Foreign Wars Post in Buffalo, Missouri. really glad to see all the veterans here. I think everybody needs to give them a round of applause. I'm really glad to see all the students here, but I bet you didn't have much choice, did you? Anyway, I'm here today to present a citation for the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 4080 in Buffalo, Missouri, Voice of Democracy Award. And I want Jesse Fields front and center. Where's he at? Come on, man, get a move on it. We ain't got all day. All right, well, I guess he decided to skip out today, so anyway, what I've got is I have a certificate here for Mr. Fields, showing that he won our Post Voice of Democracy. I also have a $100 Visa gift certificate for him. So, next year, you guys need to get into this, you can make a little money, you know? All right, well, thank you for your time, and thank you for what you're doing for us veterans. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and congratulations, Jesse. I'm Caleb Simpson, your student body vice president for this year, and it has been a pleasure watching and listening to all of these presentations here today. We have one more time-honored tradition that we'd like to witness, and that is the playing of taps. Well, taps was originally known as a call to extinguish lights in camp. This 24-note song has become most associated with military funerals, wreath-laying ceremonies, and memorial services for our U.S. service members. Fellow students and guests, please join with me for a moment of silence while Mr. Young honors our lost service members with the playing of taps and remain standing until the retired good colors.
Hold. Forward. Coach. Disperse.
Thank you again, veterans and visitors, for attending our 2022 Veterans Day Assembly. If you will, please allow a few moments for our students to exit the auditorium at this time. Students, you may go back to your 4th block class.